From hero to zero, 10 leadership pitfalls that can derail your success. This has been burning on my chest for a very long time because as someone who mentors and coaches leaders and executives and team members, I get to observe the things that are working against leaders. And that is what I want to share with you today so that you as a leader be aware about what can derail your success. If you are a leader, number one, value everyone, because not valuing everyone is the death knell of leadership. Everyone has worth, and we need to understand that. Everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone deserves to be understood. You know, when we talk about respect, this is what respect is all about. Understanding that everyone has worth, value, and opinion, and everyone should be heard. The great Martin Luther King says, everyone has the power for greatness, not for fame, but greatness, because greatness is determined by service. Now, when we don't value people, we immediately cut off that potential for greatness, and that is not what we want to do as leaders. We want to value everyone. Number two, not standing up for the team. Have you ever seen a leader sit idly by as his team members are ripped into shreds in the boardroom? Nothing aggravates me more than this, to see a weak leader seeing his people being torn apart by other executives or peers. It is just so wrong. We need to take a cue from the great Captain Sully Sullenberger for his miracle landing on the Hudson. He stood up for the team. He made a quick decision under pressure. He did not sit idly by, but he took action. The great John Wooden, basketball coach, says, great leaders are willing to sacrifice their own personal interests for the good of the team. Sacrifice fear for the good of the team, but stand up for the team. Some leaders even favor others over their team. It's pathetic. And that is the death knell of many a leader, because you very quickly begin to lose leadership currency in the eyes of your people, allowing verbal attacks and insults. That's a huge no-no for great leadership. Number three, lack of vision. The good book says where there's no vision, people perish. Have you ever seen a leader with ever-changing vision? Today it's north, tomorrow it's south, next day it's east, next day is west. That is wishy-washy planning. And I'm not saying don't adapt plans, but there's a difference between pivoting and adapting versus being all over the place. And honestly, some leaders, they got no compass. They are all over the place. Case in point, Kodak, the once dominant camera company, they failed to adapt to the digital age. They went bankrupt. And this failure was due in part to a lack of consistent vision. If they had a consistent vision, they would have kept up with the time and they would have moved accordingly. This quote from Yogi Berra, American professional baseball catcher who later became manager and coach, sums it all. He says, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. Number four, neglect and lack of communication. You see, when Satya Nadella took over the CEO of Microsoft, he implemented a culture of empathy and active listening. He encouraged open communication. Why? Because he knew he needed to create a safe environment for employees to share the ideas and concerns that they had. Failure to mentor, coach, and equip is part of this. Failure to communicate effectively with the team. And it could lead to misunderstandings, confusion, and decreased productivity. Have you ever had a team hearing 3 different things at one time? It's awful. But it points to a lack of communication across the board. Part of inclusion is actively listening. Some leaders don't listen. They don't listen to what their people have to say. They lead by force, draconian rule. And that is the death knell of great leadership. The moment you begin to exclude people from communications, the moment you begin to segregate and isolate, it's the beginning of the end. Diversity is more than race, religion, orientation, creed, and stuff like that. Diversity is all about knowing you should listen to the diverse voices on your team and effectively communicate. tailoring your communication to fit the specific individuals around you. Number 5, this is a huge pet peeve of mine, and it's micromanaging. And I've had my share of micromanaging managers. But the key thing is leaders who micromanage their team, they create a culture of distrust. They create a culture of strife. They create a culture of putting the throttle on creativity and innovation. And the great Steve Jobs, he tells us innovation is what distinguishes a leader from a follower. So by the time you're throttling people's creativity, you are in no way showing great signs of leadership. You see, it's important for leaders to delegate tasks and empower their team and to let go of those things. Give the team the environment and support that they need and trust them to get the job done. Just trust them to get the job done. Still on Steve Jobs, who we know as the co-founder of Apple. He is actually known for a little bit of micromanaging tendency. But along with that, he had the ability to inspire. He had a way of innovating, so the equation, if you will, was somewhat balanced. A quote from Steve Jobs goes like this: management is about persuading people to do the things that they don't want to do, while leadership is about inspiring people to do things they never thought they could. In other words, you inspire them to blow their own minds, do things they never even thought they could do. So there needs to be balance. Yes, we can delegate, but we need to let go. And then we need to inspire, just like Steve Jobs did. Case in point, there's another story about Steve Jobs, and I call it the story about the squares with rounded edges. So there's this guy called Bill Atkinson who was responsible for developing the code that created the Mac's graphical user interface, and he designed a function for drawing rectangles with rounded corners. But Jobs, as we know him to be, was not satisfied. Jobs said this curve is not smooth enough. He wanted it to be perfectly curved. Atkinson became rather irked and a bit frustrated. He said, "Why does it have to be this way?" And Jobs said, "Follow me." And he took him on a journey outside, showing him windows in cars with perfectly rounded edges and buildings with perfectly rounded edges. The poor Atkinson went back to work and eventually came up with a solution that satisfied Jobs the next day, the very next day. And this attention to detail, it's not micromanaging. It's knowing what the specs and the requirements should be, but at the same time giving people the inspiration to go off and do what they never even thought they could. Atkinson did not believe he could do it. He said it can't be done, but the very next day he came back. So there's a difference between micromanaging versus inspiring, and we want to inspire. Number 6, not providing feedback. Providing feedback is essential for growth, my friends. It's essential for development. Leaders who fail to provide regular feedback to their teams, they are hindering progress and they're preventing them from reaching their full potential. There are many stories I could tell you, but one story comes to mind about the power of feedback. Bill Gates back in the 90s was quite good with inspiring people to feed back whatever they thought. In fact, he allowed people to send memos to him and communicate what was important. One of the employees back then, rest his soul, Eric Engstrom, he returned from a trip to Cornell University where he had seen firsthand the growing popularity of Netscape Navigator. How many of you remember Netscape? If you remember Netscape, that's a while back, huh? Don't date yourself now. But Netscape was really popular at Cornell. And Engstrom, he saw this and he wrote a memo. You know, we call it the sky is falling memo. He wrote the memo to Bill Gates and other top executives, warning them that the internet was a threat to the company's dominance. And if they didn't act quickly, they risked losing their position in the market as number one. This went all the way up to Gates. He took the memo seriously and he launched a major effort to improve Internet Explorer. I believe it was number 6 on his list. It went from number 6 all the way to the top. And he tasked a team of engineers with creating a new version of the browser that would be faster and more user-friendly than Netscape. The team worked tirelessly, They developed Internet Explorer 3, which included several new features. And Microsoft also implemented a new strategy for distributing the browser. That became a little bit famous in legal history, but this helped to rapidly increase the market share of Internet Explorer, making it the dominant browser. So the sky is falling memo is a great example of how feedback, not only from management, but to management, is very important. It alerted Bill Gates to the threat posed by Netscape Navigator. Well, where is Netscape today? Where is Internet Explorer reborn today in the form of Edge? Still a dominant force. If not for Eric, probably would not have been the case. And all this talk about feedback is exemplified in a quote from one of my heroes in leadership, Ken Blanchard. And you might know about Ken Blanchard from the situational leadership model, but he says, feedback is the breakfast of champions. Don't shirk from giving feedback, and don't shirk from receiving feedback. You know what great leaders do? Great leaders ask the question to their people without fear or shame, how well am I doing? How well am I performing? Am I up to snuff? It's okay to ask the question, because guess what? The people you're asking, they already have an opinion. So whether you listen to their view about your leadership or not, they have an opinion. So you might as well listen. Get the feedback. Use it to get to that next level. Number 7, have you ever seen a leader with a lack of empathy? Nothing irritates me more than that. To see leaders who lack empathy and they fail to understand the team's perspective. The team is a dog's body. They don't matter. You're just a resource. You're just a racehorse. That is awful. It's important for leaders to demonstrate empathy and actively listen to their team's concerns. Empathy can be seen all around us by people who understand true leadership. A great role model for empathy is the chef Jose Andres, and he mobilized his team to provide meals to those affected by the Hurricane Katrina. He told Anderson Cooper that when it comes to leadership, the most important thing in a crisis is the ability to adapt. And adapt he did. And he had empathy. He had empathy to provide food for those who would have gone hungry. That's what leadership is about. Empathy. I like a quote from Alfred Adler, the Austrian medical doctor, and he says, empathy is seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another. Number 8, failing to lead by example. Have you ever seen a leader that says, don't do as I do as I say? Very poor leadership, isn't it? Well, leaders who fail to lead by example can damage their credibility and create a culture of hypocrisy. Leaders need to set the tone for their team and demonstrate the values and behaviors that they expect from their team. The great Jack Welch, rest his soul, CEO of GE, was known for his strong leadership and commitment to excellence. He led by example, working long hours and setting high expectations for his team. There's stories of where Jack said, I need a mentor to help me get to where I need to get to. And in many an instant, it was people who were junior to him in the organization that mentored him in the areas of technology and other fields. A quote from the great Albert Schweitzer, polymath, learned across so many domains, theologian, organist, musicologist, writer, humanitarian, philosopher, and physician. He said, example is not the main thing in influencing others. It is the only thing. And if we're able to correlate that, the true measure of leadership is influence, as my mentor John Maxwell says, correlate influence and leadership. It's all about being an example. John says great leaders model the way. They show the way. Great leaders go first. We got to lead by example. Number 9, not adapting to change. Failing to adapt to change in the industry or market can leave organizations behind. When you see a leader that is set in their ways and refusing to deviate according to the trends in the market space, you know that it's the beginning of the end. Leaders need to stay current with industry trends and be willing to adapt their strategies and processes to remain competitive. Be consistent in principle, but be adaptive to change. The great Mike Tyson, he says, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth. Sticking rigidly to a plan that doesn't work does the leader no good. At the end of the day, it actually exposes the leader for lack of flexibility and foresight. Case in point, Blockbuster, you all know the yellow and the blue. You probably went there to rent VHS tapes, not even DVDs, maybe DVDs. But those of you who did, it takes you back, right? But where's Blockbuster today? The video rental company. They failed to adapt to the rise of streaming services like Netflix and Hulu. In fact, Netflix was on their arms and knees saying, please buy us, buy us. And they didn't buy Netflix. Blockbuster said, no, we ain't buying you. Go perish. But that didn't happen. The tables were turned. Why? Because Blockbuster was incapable of adapting to change. And thus, the demise of Blockbuster. A quote from Albert Einstein sums it up really nicely in number 9 here. And Einstein says, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Wow. Taking that from Einstein should be an example of how intelligence is assessed. Anyone who isn't changing based on the trend, based on the evolving technology and the business world around us, they're not ready for leadership. Here's the final one, number 10. Number 10 is not investing in the team. Not investing in the team is a trait that you find in leaders who don't understand what leadership is about. Because leadership is all about influencing. And in order to influence, you need to invest your time in the team. You need to invest your efforts in the team. Leaders who fail to invest in their team's professional development can create a culture of stagnation. It leads to a lot of crippling factors in entire organizations where things go down the tubes. Great leaders know that there's a price to be paid for growth, and that is the investment of their time and their efforts and resources in people development. It's important for leaders to provide opportunities for training and mentorship and career growth. And if you're a leader, I want to encourage you to do this for your team. Encourage them to grow. This can help to attract top talent and retain top talent and drive the entire organization forward. I have a quote for you regarding point number 10, and it's by Ralph Nader, American political activist, author, and lecturer. And he says, the function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. If you are yet to work yourself out of a job, you're yet to experience one of the joys of leadership. Because great leaders replicate, they duplicate, they transform by multiplying themselves. And this is one of the strategies of my mentor, John C. Maxwell, is to create more leaders, to make an impact, to make a change. That's what leadership is all about. Case in point, Google is known for its commitment to employee development and growth. And the company provides opportunities for training, mentorship, career advancement, which has helped attract and maintain top talent. So there you have it, my friends. 10 pitfalls we as leaders should stay away from. Number 1, not valuing everyone. Number 2, not standing up for the team. Number 3, lack of vision. Number 4, neglect and lack of communication. Number 5, micromanaging. Number 6, not providing feedback. Number 7, lack of empathy. Number 8, failing to lead by example. Number 9, not adapting to change. And number 10, not investing in the team. I hope this has given you some context, my friend. And if you are a leader seeking coaching, mentoring, development in any way to help take you and your team to that next level, going down to pmanonymous.com, learn a little bit more about leadership coaching and mentoring that's available. But more than anything else, let this be a reminder of what not to do to remain great in your leadership. Thank you very much, my friends, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.